My today's lecture is on the metaphysical poets composed by T.S. Eliot. Today I will show you a brief biography of T.S. Eliot. Let's see. First of all, I would like to tell you who is T.S. Eliot. Actually, T.S. Eliot or Thomas Stearns Eliot was an American-born British poet, essayist, publisher, playwright, literary critic, and editor. He is best known for his poems The Wasteland and the Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock. And these poems are a heavy poem that draws allusions on different genres and talked about poems in the literary history. Let's peep into the early life of T.S. Eliot. T.S. Eliot, or full form Thomas Stearns Eliot, was born in St. Louis, Missouri on September 26, 1888. He lived in St. Louis during the first 18 years of his life and attended Harvard University. In 1910, he left the United States for the Sorbonne, having earned both undergraduate and master's degree and having contributed several poems to the Harvard Advocate. After a year in Paris, he returned to Harvard to pursue a doctorate in philosophy, but returned to Europe and settled in England in 1914. The following year, he married Viviana Hayes Wood and began working in London, first as a teacher and later for Lloyd's Bank. It was in London that Eliot came under the influence of his contemporary poet Ezra Pound, who recognized his poetic genius at once and assisted in the publication of his work in a number of magazines, most notably the Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock in Poetry in 1915. His first book of poems, Prufrock and Other Observations, was published in 1917 and immediately established him as a leading poet of the avant-garde. With the publication of The Wasteland in 1922, he is now considered by many to be the single most influential poetic work of the 20th century. Eliot's reputation began to grow to nearly mythical proportions by 1930s, and for the next 30 years he was the most dominant figure in poetry and literary criticism in the English-speaking world. As a poet, he transmuted his affinity for the English metaphysical poets in the 17th century, most notably John Donne, and the 19th century French symbolist poets, including Baudelaire and Lafont, into radical innovations in poetic technique and subject matter. His poems in many respects articulated the disillusionment of a younger, post-World War I generation with the values and conventions, both literary and social, of the Victorian era. As a critic, he also had an enormous impact on contemporary literary taste, propounding views that after his conversion to Orthodox Christianity in the later 30s were increasingly based on social and religious conservatism. His major later poetry collections include Ash Wednesday in 1930 and Four Quarters in 1943. His books of literary and social criticism include The Sacred Wood in 1920, The Use of Poetry and the Use of Criticism in 1933, After Strange Gods in 1934, and Notes Towards the Definition of Culture in 1940. Eliot was also an important playwright whose verse dramas included Murder in the Cathedral, The Family Reunion, and The Cocktail Party. He became a British citizen in 1927, long associated with the publishing house of Faber and Faber. He published many younger poets and eventually became the director of the firm. After a notoriously unhappy first marriage, Eliot separated from his first wife in 1933 and remarried Valerie Fletcher in 1956. T.S. Eliot received the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1948. He also won the Order of Merit by the British government, and he died in London on January 4, 1965. Actually, he died of emphysema at his home in Kensington in London, and he was cremated at Golders Green Crematorium. In according to his wishes, his ashes were taken to St. Michael and All Angels Church, East Coker, the village in Somerset from which Eliot's ancestors had emigrated to America. In 1967, on the second anniversary of his death, Eliot was commemorated by the placement of a large stone in the floor of Poets' Corner in London's Westminster Abbey. The stone, cut by designer Reynolds Stone, is inscribed with his life dates, his order of merit, and a quotation from his poems Little Gidding. The communication of the dead is tongued with the fire beyond the language of the living. The apartment block where he died, number 3 Kensington Court Gardens, has had a blue opaque on it since 1986. He is considered one of the 20th century's major poets, and he attracted widespread attention for his poem The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock in 1950, which was seen as a masterpiece for the modernist movement. It was followed by some of the best-known poems of him in the English language, like The Wasteland in 1922, The Hollow Man in 1925, Ash Wednesday in 1930, and Four Quarters in 1943. He was also known for his 7 plays, particularly Murder in Cathedral in 1935 and The Cocktail Party in 1949. He was awarded for Nobel Prize in Literature in 1948 for his outstanding and pioneer contribution to the poetry or to the present-day poetry. Eliot made significant contributions not only to the field of poetry and plays but also to the field of literary criticism, leaving strongly influence on the school of new criticism. He was somewhat self-deprecating and minimizing of his work, and once said his criticism was merely a byproduct of his private poetry workshop. But the critic William Emerson once said, "I do not know for certain how much of my own mind Eliot invented, let alone how much of it is a reaction against him or indeed a consequence of misreading him. He is a very penetrating influence, perhaps not unlike the east wind." Eliot's essays were a major factor in the revival of interest in the metaphysical poets. Eliot particularly praised the metaphysical poets' ability to show experience as both psychological and sensual, while all the same time infusing this portrayal with, in Eliot's view, wit and uniqueness. Eliot's essay Metaphysical Poets, along with giving new significance and attention to metaphysical poetry, introduced his now well-known definition of unified sensibility, which is considered by some to mean the same thing as the term metaphysical. So, we will discuss the metaphysical poets, or what Eliot has written, or what his views regarding metaphysical poets in his essay Metaphysical Poets, in our next classes or in next videos. So that's enough for today. Till then, stay safe, stay at home, and be healthy. Thank you.